The Second Book of Enoch, Slavonic Enoch. Introduction. As part of the Enochian literature, 2 Enoch is included in the pseudepigraphal corpus, also known as pseudepigrapha spurious, or pseudonymous writings. These are essentially Jewish writings ascribed to various biblical patriarchs and prophets. As well, they are composed within approximately 200 years of the birth of Jesus Christ. In 1773, rumors of a surviving copy of an ancient book drew Scottish explorer James Bruce to distant Ethiopia. There he found 1 Enoch. Later, another Book of Enoch surfaced. The text, which is known as 2 Enoch, was discovered in 1886 by Professor Sokolov in the archives of the Belgrade Public Library. 2 Enoch was written in the latter half of the 1st century AD. The text was preserved only in Slavonic and consequently bears the designation Slavonic Enoch. The text has also been known by the titles of the Second Book of Enoch and the Secrets of Enoch. 2 Enoch is basically an expansion of Genesis 5:21 through 32, taking the reader from the time of Enoch to the onset of the great flood of Noah's day. The main theme of the book is the ascension of Enoch, progressively through multiple heavens. During the ascension, Enoch is transfigured into an angel and granted access to the secrets of creation. Enoch is then given a 30-day grace period to return to earth and instruct his sons and all the members of his household regarding everything God had revealed to him. The text reports that after a period of grace, an angel will then come to retrieve him to take him from the earth. Many credible versions end with chapter 68. However, there is a longer version of 2 Enoch, which we will examine. In this version, the wisdom and insights given to the family of Enoch is passed from family members to Melchizedek, whom God raises up as an archpriest. Melchizedek then fulfills the function of a prophet-priest. To pave the way to Melchizedek, Methuselah functions as a priest for 10 years, and then passed his station on to Ner, Noah's younger brother. Ner's wife, Sopanim, miraculously conceives without human intercourse while about to die, and posthumously gives birth to Melchizedek, who is born with the appearance and maturity of a 3-year-old child, and the symbol of the priesthood on his chest. The world is doomed to suffer the flood, but Michael, the archangel, promises Melchizedek salvation. The text goes on to report that in the last generation, there will be another Melchizedek, who will be the head of all, a great archpriest, the word and power of God, who will perform miracles greater and more glorious than all the previous ones. The manuscripts which contain and preserve this document exist only in Old Slavonic. Of the 20 or more manuscripts dating from the 13th century AD, no single one contains the complete text of 2 Enoch. When pieced together, there appear to be 2 versions. These we will refer to as the long and short version. The difference in length between the 2 is due to 2 quite different features. There are blocks of text found only in the longer manuscripts, but even when the passages are parallel, the longer manuscripts tend to be more full and detailed. At the same time, there is so much verbal similarity when the passages correspond that a common source must be supposed. The form of 2 Enoch is what one finds in Jewish wisdom literature and Jewish apocalyptic literature. It has been suggested that the longer version is characterized by editorial expansions and Christian interpolations. Hence, the shorter version contains fewer Christian elements. The author of 2 Enoch speaks much of the Creator and final judgment, but he speaks very little about redemption, which seems to be absent from the thoughts of the author. Indeed, There seems to be a total lack of a savior or redeemer in 2 Enoch. What is noteworthy is that 2 Enoch has no reference to the mercy of God. In the long version presented here, it appears that the last portion of the text was added as an afterthought. It contains the rise of Melchizedek. The appearance of Melchizedek ties 2 Enoch to several other texts, forming a Melchizedekian tradition. The author of 2 Enoch follows a tradition in which an aged mother, who had been barren up to her deathbed, miraculously conceived Melchizedek without human intervention. Before she was able to give birth to the baby, she died. The baby then emerged from her dead body with the maturity of a 3-year-old boy. His priesthood will be perpetuated throughout the generations until another Melchizedek appears. If the last Melchizedek serves as the archpriest for the last generation, it indicates that in the mind of this Jewish writer, the temple was to be rebuilt and would be the place where God would meet his people when the heathen nations were destroyed. The continuation and victory of the Jews as the selected and blessed people of God is implied. In this vein, 2 Enoch follows certain apocalyptic writings. For more information on apocalyptic writings, see End of Days by Joseph Lumpkin. The Slavonic version is translated from a Greek source. Most scholars agree that there was either a Hebrew or Aramaic original lying behind the Greek source from which the Slavonic manuscripts were produced. The Hebrew origins are indicated by Semitisms in the work, but there are also Greek words and expressions. Proof that the Slavonic Enoch was first written in Greek is shown by the derivation of Adam's name and by several coincidences with the Septuagint. The origin of the story is perhaps based on Hebrew traditions, and certain Semitic turns of language show up in the text. This tends to indicate that there was at one time a Hebrew or Aramaic text that preceded the Greek. From the Greek, it was translated into Slavonic. Of this version, there are 5 manuscripts or pieces thereof found. The short version, or the Slavonic Enoch, was probably written by a single author in an attempt to bring all the current traditions about Enoch of his time into a central storyline and system. The schema to accomplish the unity of traditions implements Enoch's ascension through multiple heavens. This author was probably a Jew living in Egypt. There are several elements in the book which indicate Egyptian origin. The longer version of 2 Enoch was seeded with Christian elements and appended with an ending that does not fit well, illuminating the fact that there were several authors involved in the longer version. Parts of the book was probably written in the late 1st century AD. The first date is a limit set by the fact that Ethiopic Enoch, Ecclesiasticus, and Wisdom of Solomon are used as sources or references within the text. The second date is a limit set by the fact that the destruction of the temple is not mentioned at all. However, it must be added that apocalyptic literature bloomed after the destruction of the temple, especially between late 1st century and throughout the 2nd century AD. The Slavonic Enoch furnishes new material for the study of religious thought in the beginning of the Common Era. The ideas of the millennium and of the multiple heavens are the most important in this connection. Another very interesting feature is the presence of evil in heaven, the fallen angels in the 2nd heaven, and hell in the 3rd. The idea of evil in heaven may be a nod to the book of Job and the dialogue between God and Satan, who is coming and going between heaven and earth. The idea of hell in the 3rd heaven may have been derived from ideas expressed in the Old Testament book of Isaiah, which mentions that the sufferings of the wicked will be witnessed by the righteous in paradise. Chapter 21 and forward for several chapters shows a heavy influence of Greek mythology. The zodiac is mentioned along with celestial bodies with names such as Zeus, Cronus, Aphrodite, and others. The part of the text containing names and astrological descriptions could have been tampered with as late as the 7th century AD. By far, the most interesting and confusing section begins around chapter 25 and runs for several chapters. Here, the text takes a turn towards Gnostic theology and cosmology. The Gnostics were a Christian sect which formed and grew in the 1st century AD and thrived in the 2nd century AD. Although Gnosticism borrowed from Plato's 428 BC to 348 BC creation myth, the maturity and construction of the story shows it to be of Gnostic Christian origin, placing it no earlier than the last part of the 1st century AD, and no later than the end of the 2nd century. Add to the dating question the fact that the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem is not mentioned, which leads to a date just before 70 AD, if one assumes the Gnostic flavor was not added later. The history of the text is obviously long and varied. It probably began as a Jewish oral tradition with pieces taken from several Enochian stories. Although the foundation of the story was first penned in Hebrew or Aramaic around the 1st or 2nd centuries AD, the date of the version of the text here is unknown. Later, the story was expanded and embellished by Greek influences. Lastly, Christians and Gnostics commandeered the book and added their own matter. Thus, 2 Enoch exhibits a kaleidoscope of cultural and religious contributions over a great scope of time from the 1st century BC, assuming it came after 1 Enoch, and ending as late as the 7th century AD. These additions would allow any serious student insight into how ancient texts evolve. 2 Enoch was rediscovered and published in the early 19th century AD. The text before you uses the R.H. Charles and W.R. Morfield translation of 1896, with additions from other sources. Archaic terms and sentence structure were revised or explained to convey a more modern rendering for the 21st century readers. To Enoch, Slavonic Enoch, the Book of the Secrets of Enoch. Chapter 1. There was a wise man and a great craftsman, and the Lord formed a love for him and received him, so that he should see the highest dwellings and be an eyewitness of the wise and great and inconceivable and unchanging realm of God Almighty, and of the very wonderful and glorious and bright and manifold vision of the position of the Lord's servants, and of the inaccessible throne of the Lord, and of the degrees and manifestations of the spiritual, non-physical hosts, and of the unspeakable ministration of the multitude of the elements, and of the various apparition and singing of the host of cherubim, which is beyond description, and of the limitless light. At that time he said, when my 165th year was completed, I begat my son Methuselah. After this I lived 200 years, and finished of all the years of my life 365 years. On the first day of the month I was in my house alone, and was resting on my bed and slept. And when I was asleep, great distress came up into my heart, and I was weeping with my eyes in sleep, and I could not understand what this distress was, or what was happening to me. And there appeared to me 2 very large men, so big that I never saw such on earth. Their faces were shining like the sun, their eyes were like a burning light, and from their lips fire was coming out. They were singing, Their clothing was of various kinds in appearance and was purple. Their wings were brighter than gold, and their hands whiter than snow. They were standing at the head of my bed, and began to call me by my name. And I arose from my sleep and clearly saw the two men standing in front of me. And I greeted them and was seized with fear, and the appearance of my face was changed to terror. And those men said to me, Enoch, have courage and do not fear. The eternal God sent us to you, and you shall ascend today with us into heaven. And you shall tell your sons and all your household all that they shall do without you on earth in your house. And let no one seek you until the Lord returns you to them. And I hurried to obey them, and went out of my house, and went to the doors as I was ordered. And I summoned my sons Methuselah and Regem and Gidad, and explained to them all the marvels the men had told me. Chapter 2. Listen to me, my children. I do not know where I will go, or what will befall me. So now, my children, I tell you, do not turn from God in the face of that which is empty or prideful, which did not make heaven and earth, for these shall perish along with those who worship them. And may the Lord make your hearts confident in the fear, respect of him. And now, my children, let no one consider seeking me until the Lord returns me to you. Chapter 3. It came to pass when Enoch had finished speaking to his sons, that the angels took him onto their wings, and lifted him up onto the first heaven, and placed him on the clouds. And there I, Enoch, looked, and again I looked higher, and saw the ether. And they placed me on the first heaven, and showed me a very large sea, bigger than the earthly sea. See 2 Corinthians 12:2. Chapter 4. They brought the elders and rulers of the stellar orders in front of me, and showed me 200 angels, who rule the stars and services of the stars to the heavens, and fly with their wings, and come round all those who sail. Chapter 5. And here I looked down and saw the storehouses of snow, and the angels who keep their amazing storehouses, and the clouds where they come out of, and into which they go. Chapter 6. They showed me the storehouse of the dew, like olive oil in its appearance and its form, as of all the flowers of the earth. And they also showed me many angels guarding the storehouses of these things, and how they are made to shut and open. Chapter 7. And those men took me, and led me up onto the second heaven, and showed me darkness, greater than earthly darkness. And there I saw prisoners hanging, watched, guarded, awaiting the great and limitless judgment. And the spirits were dark in appearance, more than earthly darkness, and perpetually weeping through all hours. And I said to the men who were with me, Why are these being unceasingly tortured? They answered me, These are God's apostates, who did not obey God's commands, but took counsel with their own will, and turned away with their prince, who is also held captive in the fifth heaven. And I felt great pity for them, and they greeted me, and said to me, Man of God, pray to the Lord for us. And I answered them, I am just a mortal man. Who am I that I should pray for spirits? Who knows where I go, or what will become of me, or who will pray for me? Chapter 8. And those men took me from there, and led me up onto the third heaven, and placed me there. I looked down and saw what this place produces, and that it was so good that such as has never been known. And I saw all the sweet, flowering trees, and I saw their fruits, which were sweet-smelling, and I saw all the foods that came from them, and that the food was bubbling with fragrant vapors. And in the middle of the trees was the tree of life, in that place where the Lord rests when he goes up into paradise. And this tree is of indescribable goodness and fragrance, and adorned more than anything existing. And all sides of its form were golden and brilliant red and fire-like, and it was completely covered, and it produced all fruits. See Revelation 22:2. Its root is in the garden at the earth's end, and paradise resides between spiritual and physical. And two springs come out which send forth honey and milk, and their springs send forth oil and wine, and they separate into four parts, and flow quietly around, and go down into the paradise of Eden, between the mutable and the eternal. See Genesis 2:11-14. And where they go forth along the earth, and have a circular flow even as other elements, and there is no unfruitful tree here, and every place is blessed. 300 angels, which are very bright, are there to keep the garden, and with incessant sweet singing with voices, which are never silent, serve the Lord throughout all the hours of days. And I said, how very sweet is this place. And those men said to me. Chapter 9. This place, O Enoch, is prepared for the righteous, who endure all manner of offense from those that exasperate their souls, who avert their eyes from iniquity, and make righteous judgment, and give bread to the hungering, and cover the naked with clothing, and raise up the fallen, and help injured orphans, and who walk without fault before the face of the Lord, and serve him alone, and for them is prepared this place for eternal inheritance. Chapter 10. And those two men led me up on to the northern side, and showed me there a very terrible place, and there were every kind of tortures in that place, cruel darkness and gloom, and there was absolutely no light at all there, but murky fire constantly flaming above, and there is a fiery river coming out, and everywhere in that entire place is fire, and everywhere there is frost and ice, thirst and shivering, while the physical restraints are very cruel, and the spirits were fearsome and merciless, bearing angry weapons, torturing without mercy. And I said, woe, woe, this place is so terrible. And those men said to me, this place, O Enoch, is prepared for those who dishonor God, who on earth practice sin against nature, which is sodomy of a child, corruption of children, performing magic, enchantments, and devilish witchcrafts, and who boast of their wicked deeds, stealing, lying, slander, envy, resentment, fornication, murder, and who are accursed and steal the souls of men, and those who see the poor and still take away their goods, so they grow rich, and injure them for other men's goods. And this is reserved for those who, to satisfy their own emptiness, made the hungering die, those who clothe themselves by stripping the naked, and who did not know their Creator, but instead bowed to lifeless gods who have no soul, who cannot see nor hear, who are empty, and who built carved images, and bow down to unclean fashioning of useless gods. This place is prepared for these as an eternal inheritance. Chapter 11. Those men took me and led me up on to the fourth heaven, and showed me the entire succession of activities, and all the rays of the light of sun and moon, and I measured their progression, and compared their light, and saw that the sun's light is greater than the moon's. Its circle and the wheels on which it goes always is like the wind passing, with very amazing speed, with no rest, day or night. Its egress and ingress are accompanied by 4 huge stars, and each star has 1,000 stars under it. To the right of the sun's wheel there are 4,000 stars, and to the left are 4,000. Altogether, 8,000, going out with the sun continually. And by day, 15 groups of 10,000 angels attended, and by night there were 1,000. And 6 winged ones go forth with the angels before the sun's wheel into the fiery flames, and 100 angels kindle the sun and set it alight. Chapter 12. And I looked and saw other flying elements of the sun, whose names are phoenixes and chalkidry, which are marvelous and wonderful, with feet and tails of a lion and a crocodile's head. They appear to be purple in color, like that in the rainbow. Their size is 900 measures. Their wings are like those of angels. Each has 12 wings, and they attend and accompany the sun, bearing heat and dew, as it is ordered them from God. Author's note. The word chalkidry means serpents. It appears that the Slavonic translators rendered the Hebrew word seraphim differently in various places in the text. The word was translated serpent in some places, and seraphim in others. Seraph means to burn. This is how the sun revolves and goes, and rises under the heaven, and its course goes under the earth with the light of its rays continually. Chapter 13. Then those men carried me away to the east, and placed me at the sun's gates, where the sun has egress according to the season's circuit and regulation of the months of the whole year, and the number of the hours, day and night. And I saw 6 gates open, each gate having 61 stadia, 185 meters, and a quarter of 1 stadium, 46¼ meters. And I measured them accurately, and knew their size. Through the gates the sun goes out, and goes to the west, and is made even, and rises throughout all the months, and turns back again from the 6 gates, according to the succession of the seasons. In this way the period of the entire year is finished after the return of the 4 seasons. Author's note. 6 multiplied by 61 equals 366. With the quarter day added, this is the length of the leap year. Chapter 14. And again, those men led me away to the western parts, and showed me 6 great open gates corresponding to the eastern gates, opposite to where the sun sets, according to the number of the days, 365¼ Note that this is a solar calendar of the same length as our modern calendar. Again, it goes down to the western gates and diminishes, pulls away its light with the prominent brightness under the earth. The crown of its glory is in heaven with the Lord, and it is guarded by 400 angels while the sun goes round on wheel under the earth. And it stands 7 great hours a night, and spins half its course under the earth. And when it comes to the eastern approach in the 8th hour of the night, it brings its lights in the crown of glory, and the sun burns, flames, outwardly more than fire. Chapter 15. Then the elements of the sun, called phoenixes and chalkidry, seraphim, break into song. Therefore every bird flutters its wings, rejoicing at the giver of light, and they break into song at the command of the Lord. The Kadosh, holy, holy, holy. The giver of light comes to illuminate the entire world, and the morning guard takes shape, which is the rays of the sun, and the sun of the earth goes out, and receives its luminance to light up the entire face of the earth. And they showed me this calculation of the sun's going, and the great gates which it enters into are for the calculation of the hours of the year. For this reason the sun is a great creation, whose circuit lasts 28 years, and begins again from the beginning. Author's note. For February 29th, which is the leap year day, to fall on a particular weekday, there is a 28-year, 2 by 14-year cycle. This forms a type of perpetual calendar. Chapter 16. Those men showed me the great course of the moon. There are 12 great gates that are crowned from west to east, by which the moon comes and goes in its customary times. It goes in at the first gate to the western places of the sun, by the first gates with 31 days exactly, by the second gates with 31 days exactly, by the third with 30 days exactly, by the fourth with 30 days exactly, by the fifth with 31 days exactly, by the sixth with 31 days exactly, by the seventh with 30 days exactly, by the eighth with 31 days perfectly, by the ninth with 31 days exactly, by the 10th with 30 days perfectly, by the 11th with 31 days exactly, by the 12th with 28 days exactly. Author's note: the sum of the days total 365, with the year beginning in March. And it goes through the western gates in the order and number of the eastern, and accomplishes the 365 and a quarter days of the solar year, while the lunar year has 354, and there 12 days lacking of the solar circle, which are the lunar epochs of the whole year. Author's note: epoch is the number of days by which the solar year differs from the lunar year. It is also the number of days into the moon's phase cycle at the beginning of the solar or calendar year. The word originated in the mid-16th century and denotes the age of the moon in days at the beginning of the calendar year. It is from the French epochte, via late Latin from Greek epochta, meaning intercalated. The Great Circle also contains 532 years. Author's note: the 532-year cycle is calculated from the creation of Adam, which took place on Friday, March 1st, 5508 BC, according to some of the founding documents of the Orthodox Church, which are still in use. It is the base date on which the entire calendar system of the Orthodox Church is founded. The cycles are laid out in the final sections of the Typicon, which is the book that dictates the services, and are the Paschalian calendar sections. There are tables reflecting the 532-year cycle of the church services, which consists of 19-year solar cycles, multiplied by 28-day lunar cycles. There is a table that consists of 19 columns by 28 rows, giving the Paschal key, number or letter for each of the years of the 532-year cycle. Once you know the Paschal key, you look up the details in the following section, which consists of 35 brief calendar synopses, one for each possible day that Pascha can fall, one for each possible day that Pascha can fall. Each of these synopses actually consists of 2 services, one for regular years and one for leap years. The quarter of a day is omitted for 3 years. The fourth fulfills it exactly. Because of this, they are taken outside of heaven for 3 years and are not added to the number of days, because they change the time of the years to 2 new months toward completion, to 2 others toward the decrease. And when the course through the western gates is finished, it returns and goes to the eastern to the lights, and goes this way day and night in its heavenly circles. Below all circles, swifter than the heavenly winds, and spirits and elements and flying angels. Each angel has 6 wings. In 19 years it travels the course 7 times. Chapter 17. In the midst of the heavens I saw armed soldiers, serving the Lord, with drums and organs, with constant voice, with sweet and unceasing voice and various singing, which it is impossible to describe, and which astonishes every mind, So wonderful and marvelous is the singing of those angels, and I was delighted listening to it. Chapter 18. The men took me on to the fifth heaven and placed me, and there I saw many and countless soldiers called Grigori, of human appearance, and their size was greater than that of great giants, and their faces withered, and the silence of their mouths perpetual, and there was no service on the fifth heaven. And I said to the men who were with me, note, the Greek transliteration Egregoroi are the Watchers, a group of fallen angels who mated with mortal women and produced the Nephilim, mentioned in the book of Jubilees, 1 Enoch, and Genesis 6:4. Why are they so very withered, and their faces melancholy, and their mouths silent? And why is there no service in this heaven? And they said to me, these are the Grigori, who, with their prince Satanael, Satan, rejected the Lord of light. After them are those who are held in great darkness in the second heaven, and 3 of them went down onto earth from the Lord's throne, to the place Hermon, and broke through their vows on the shoulder of the hill Hermon, and saw the daughters of men, how good they are, and took to themselves wives, and fouled the earth with their deeds, who broke the law, and mixing with the women, giants are born, and amazingly, large men with great hatred. Author's note: the hill of Hermon could be Mount Hermon, which is mentioned over a dozen times in the Bible. And therefore God judged them with great judgment, and they weep for their brethren, and they will be punished on the Lord's great day. And I said to the Grigori, I saw your brethren in their works, and their great torments, and I prayed for them. But the Lord has condemned them to be under earth until this heaven and this earth shall end forever. And I said, why do you stand there, brethren, and do not serve before the Lord's face, and have not put your services before the Lord's face? You could anger your Lord completely. And they listened to my advice, and spoke to the 4 ranks in heaven. As I stood with those 2 men, 4 trumpets sounded together with a loud voice, and the Grigori broke into song with one voice, and their voice went up before the Lord pitifully and touchingly. Chapter 19. From there those men took me and lifted me up on to the 6th heaven, and there I saw 7 bands of angels, very bright and very glorious, and their faces shining more than the sun shining, glistening, and there is no difference in their faces, or behavior, or manner of dress. And these make the orders, and learn the goings of the stars, and the alteration of the moon, or revolution of the sun, and the good administration of the world. And when they see evil doing, they make commandments and instruction, and make sweet and loud singing, and all songs of praise. These are the archangels who are above angels, and they measure all life in heaven and on earth. And the angels who are appointed over seasons and years, the angels who are over rivers and sea, and who are over the fruits of the earth, and the angels who are over every grass, giving food to every and all living things, and the angels who write down all the souls of men, and all their deeds, and their lives before the Lord's face. In their midst are 6 phoenixes, and 6 cherubim, and 6 winged ones continually singing with one voice. And it is not possible to describe their singing, and they rejoice before the Lord at his footstool. Chapter 20. And those 2 men lifted me up from there on to the 7th heaven, and I saw there a very great light, and fiery troops of great archangels, incorporeal forces and dominions, orders and governments, cherubim and seraphim, thrones and many-eyed ones, 9 regiments, the Ioanid stations of light. And I became afraid, and began to tremble with great terror. And those men took me and led me after them, and said to me, Have courage, Enoch, do not fear, and showed me the Lord from afar, sitting on his very high throne. For what is there on the 10th heaven, since the Lord dwells there? On the 10th heaven is God. In the Hebrew tongue, he is called Eravat. Author's note: the meaning of Iowanet is not clear. However, it may be derived from the transliterations of the name John. John means the Lord is gracious. The meaning of Aravat is equally unclear, but seems to mean Father of creation. Each level of heaven represents or demonstrates a personality or part of the Godhead. One of the highest demonstrations of God's power and divinity is the power of creation. It is found on the 10th level of heaven. And all the heavenly soldiers would come and stand on the 10 steps according to their rank, and would bow down to the Lord, and would then return to their places in joy and bliss, singing songs in the unlimited light with soft and gentle voices, gloriously serving him. Note: strong and fierce soldiers sing with soft, gentle voices, bowing and serving in bliss. Chapter 21. And the cherubim and seraphim standing around the throne, and the 6-winged and many-eyed ones do not depart, standing before the Lord's face doing his will, and cover his whole throne, singing with gentle voice before the Lord's face, Holy, 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 Lord ruler Sabaoth, host, army. Heavens and earth are full of your glory. When I saw all these things, the men said to me, Enoch, thus far we were commanded to journey with you, and those men went away from me, and after that I did not see them. And I remained alone at the end of the 7th heaven, and became afraid, and fell on my face, and said to myself, Woe is me! What has befallen me? And the Lord sent one of his glorious ones, the archangel Gabriel, and he said to me, Have courage, Enoch, do not fear. Arise before the Lord's face into eternity. Arise and come with me. And I answered him and said within myself, My Lord, my soul has departed from me, due to terror and trembling, and I called to the men who led me up to this place. I relied on them, and it is with them that I can go before the Lord's face. Note: when speaking to God, Enoch said within himself. He did not have to speak aloud. And Gabriel lifted me up like a leaf caught up by the wind, and he placed me before the Lord's face. And I saw the 8th heaven, which is called in the Hebrew tongue Muzaloth, Zodiac, the changer of the seasons, of drought and of wet, and of the 12 constellations of the circle of the firmament, which are above the 7th heaven. And I saw the 9th heaven, which is called in Hebrew Kushavim, where are the heavenly homes of the 12 constellations of the circle of the firmament. Chapter 22. On the 10th heaven, which is called Eravath, I saw the appearance of the Lord's face, like iron made to glow in fire, and it shone forth and cast it out, emitting sparks, and it burned. Note: one possible meaning of Eravath is 3 times holy, or holy, holy, holy. In a moment of eternity, I saw the Lord's face, but the Lord's face is indescribable, marvelous and very amazing, and very, very terrible. And who am I to tell of the Lord's unspeakable being, and of his very wonderful face? I cannot tell the amount of his instructions, and the variety of voices. The Lord's throne is very great, and not made with hands, and I cannot tell the number of those standing around him. There were troops of cherubim and seraphim, and they sang unceasingly. I cannot tell of his unchanging beauty. Who shall tell of the unpronounceable greatness of his glory? And I fell prone and bowed down to the Lord, And the Lord with his lips said to me, Have courage, Enoch. Do not fear. Arise and stand before my face into eternity. Stand before my face eternally. Stand before my eternal face. Note: Enoch is out of and above time-space. Eternity is now, and he can feel the timelessness of where he is. The language struggles to convey this fact. And the archangel Michael lifted me up and led me to the Lord's face. And the Lord said to his servants, testing them, Let Enoch stand before my face into eternity. And the glorious ones bowed down to the Lord and said, Let Enoch go according to your word. And the Lord said to Michael, Go and take Enoch and remove his earthly garments, and anoint him with my sweet ointment, and put him into the garments of my glory. And Michael did as the Lord told him. He anointed me and dressed me, and the appearance of that ointment is more than the great light, and his ointment is like sweet dew, and its smell mild, shining like the sun's rays. And I looked at myself, and I was transformed into one of his glorious ones. Note: the number symbolism of 10 is that of new starts at a higher level, new beginnings, and recreation. And the Lord summoned one of his archangels, whose name is Pravuel, whose knowledge was quicker in wisdom than the other archangels, who wrote all the deeds of the Lord. And the Lord said to Pravuel, Bring out the books from my storehouses, and a reed of quick writing, and give it to Enoch, and deliver to him the best and comforting books out of your hand. Note: Enoch is now an angel. He now has access to the heavenly records and the understanding to use the knowledge. A reed was used in writing, much like a quill was used. Chapter 23. And he was explaining to me all the works of heaven, earth and sea, and all the elements, their passages and goings, and the sounding of the thunders, the sun and moon, the progression and changes of the stars, the seasons, years, days, and hours, as well as the risings of the wind, the numbers of the angels, and the formation of their songs, and all human things, the tongue of every human song and life, the commandments, instructions, and sweet-voiced singings, and all things that are fitting to learn. And Pravuel told me, All the things that I have told you we have written. Sit and write all the souls of mankind. However, many of them are born, and the place is prepared for them to eternity. And he said, All souls are prepared for eternity, before the formation of the world, and for both 30 days and 30 nights. And I wrote out all things exactly, and wrote 366 books. Note: if all things were created in 6 days, then the souls of all people were created at that time. In Jewish mythology, the place that the souls were housed until birth was called the Guf. Each soul was created for a certain place, time, and destiny. According to one version of the myth, when the Guf is emptied of souls, time ceases. In another version, when the last soul dies and returns to God, time will end. Enoch wrote 366 books in a 720-hour period containing information on all things, including all souls who are prepared for eternity before the formation of the world. Chapter 24. And the Lord summoned me and said to me, Enoch, sit down on my left with Gabriel. And I bowed down to the Lord, and the Lord spoke to me, Enoch, beloved, all that you see, all things that are standing finished, I tell you even before the very beginning. I created all things from non-being. I created the visible, physical things from the invisible, spiritual world. Hear, Enoch, and take in my words, for I have not told my angels my secret, and I have not told them their rise, beginnings, nor my endless realm, nor have they understood my creating, which I tell you today. For before all things were visible, physical, I alone used to go about in the invisible spiritual things, like the sun from east to west and from west to east. But even the sun has peace in itself, while I found no peace because I was creating all things, and I conceived the thought of placing foundations and of creating the visible, physical creation. Note: Overview of the heavens. First heaven. Enoch arrives on angels' wings. There are storehouses of snow and dew. Second heaven. Enoch finds a group of fallen angels. There is darkness and torture. Third heaven. There are sweet flowers, trees, and fruit. Fourth heaven. There are soldiers, heaven's army, and the progression of sun and moon. Fifth heaven. The leaders of the fallen angels, the Grigori, Greek, Gregoroi, translated Merim, the Hebrew word for watchers. A company of them went down and had intercourse with the daughters of men, yielding giants, who became the source of enmity on earth. Sixth heaven. 7 bands of angels in the ordering of the stars. Seventh heaven. Shows something unusual happening to Enoch when Gabriel puts Enoch in front of the throne of the Lord. The 8th, 9th, and 10th heavens, thought to be later additions and not part of the original text. 8th heaven, known in Hebrew as Muzaloth, or Zodiac. 9th heaven, known in Hebrew as Kuchavim, or heavenly bodies or stars. 10th heaven, Adavath. God's face was revealed like that of iron made to glow in fire. Enoch sees the appearance of the Lord's face, but calls it indescribable. Pravuel, the archangel, is commanded to write down secret information about astronomy, climate, and language, and give it over to Enoch. In other Enochian writings, the same angel, also spelled Pnumi, is criticized for teaching humans to write. Chapter 25. I commanded in the very lowest parts that the visible, physical things should come down from the invisible, spiritual realm, and Adoil came down very great, and I beheld him, and he had a belly of great light. And I said to him, Become undone, Adoil, and let the visible, physical universe come out of you. And he came undone, and a great light came out, and I was in the midst of the great light. And as there is born light from light, there came forth a great age, eon, space of time, and showed all creation, which I had thought to create. And I saw that it was good. And I placed for myself a throne, and took my seat on it, and said to the light, Go up higher from here, and station yourself high above the throne, and be a foundation to the highest things. And above the light there is nothing else. And then I rose up and looked up from my throne. Note: beginning with chapters 25 and 26, the book of 2 Enoch takes a rather Gnostic diversion. The Gnostics were a Christian sect that flourished around the 3rd century A.D. The Gnostic view of the Godhead borrowed heavily from the creation saga preached by Plato, circa 428 BC to 348 BC. The story of Adoil and the emanation of pure light from God, which brings about creation of the physical world, is similar to other Gnostic works. Gnosticism teaches that in the beginning, a supreme being called the Father, the divine all, the origin, the supreme God, or the fullness, emanated the element of existence, both visible and invisible. His intent was not to create, but, just as light emanates from a flame, so did creation shine forth from God. This manifested the primal element needed for creation. This was the creation of Barbello, who is the thought of God. The Father's thought performed a deed, and she was created from it. It is she who had appeared before him in the shining of his light. This is the first power which was before all of them, and which was created from his mind. She is the thought of the all, and her light shines like his light. It is the perfect power, which is the visage of the invisible. She is the pure, undefiled spirit who is perfect. She is the first power. Oil has that place in this myth. It could be said that Barbello was the creative emanation, and, like the divine all, is both male and female. It was the agreement of Barbello and the divine all, representing the union of male and female, that created the Christ spirit in all the eons. In some renderings, the word eon is used to designate an ethereal realm or kingdom. In other versions, eon indicates the ruler of the realm. The eons of this world are merely reflections of the eons of the eternal realm. The reflection is always inferior to real. In several Gnostic cosmologies, the living world is under the control of entities called eons, of which Sophia is head. This means the eons influence or control the soul, life force, intelligence, thought, and mind. Control of the mechanical or inorganic world is given to the archons. The archons were created by Sophia. Sophia, probably out of pride, tried to emulate the creative force of God by creating an image of herself, meaning that she wanted to produce an offspring without either consort or the approval of her father, God. As an eon, she did have the power to do so, but she wasn't perfect like the Great Spirit, or like the other two perfect eons, Barbello and the Autogenes. Nevertheless, in her arrogance, she attempted to create and failed. She was horrified when she saw her creation, an imperfect, brutish creature with a lion-faced serpent with eyes of fire, whom she called Yada-Ba'oth. Sophia cast her offspring out of Pleroma, heaven, and hid her child within a thick cloud from the other eons, because of her embarrassment and shame. Yada-Ba'oth was the first of the Archon, ruler, and he stole his mother's power, so that she wasn't able to escape from the cloud. Despite gaining Sophia's eonic power, he was weak, but prideful, ambitious, and power-hungry. Since the Archons, including Yada-Ba'oth, were androgynous beings, Yada-Ba'oth fathered 12 Archons, giving each a bit of his power. They were named Atoth, Harmas, Kalila Ombri, Yabel, Adonoi, or Sabaoth, Cain, Abel, Abrasine, Yobel, Armapiel, Melchior Adonai, and Belias. 7 Archons would rule 7 heavens and 5 in the abyss, which Yada-Ba'oth and the Archons created. Each Archon would rule a heaven, or the abyss, and created 365 angels to help them. The Archons rule the physical aspects of systems, regulation, limits, and order in the world. Both the ineptitude and cruelty of the Archons are reflected in the chaos and pain of the material realm. See the book, The Gnostic Scriptures by Joseph Lumpkin, published by Fifth Estate. Although the above may be a digression from the text of 2 Enoch, it adds insight into the time frame and origins of its production. Gnostic influences were felt from the late 1st century to the early 4th century AD. If the writer of this section of 2 Enoch was exposed to the Gnostic sect, it would exclusively make 2 Enoch a text with Christian influences. Chapter 26. And I summoned the very lowest the second time, and said, Let Archas come forth hard. And he came forth hard from the invisible, spiritual. And Archas came forth, hard, heavy, and very red. And I said, Be opened, Archas, and let there be born from you. And he came apart, and an age came forth, very great and very dark, bearing the creation of all lower things. And I saw that it was good, and said to him, Go down below, and make yourself solid, and be a foundation for the lower things. And it happened, and he went down and stationed himself, and became the foundation for the lower things, and below the darkness there is nothing else. Note: hard and heavy could be terms for gravid or pregnant, with birth being imminent. Archos could equate to the archons. Chapter 27. And I commanded that there should be taken from light and darkness. And I said, Be thick, and it became thick. And I spread it out with the light, and it became water. And I spread it out over the darkness, below the light, and then I made firm the waters, that is to say, the bottomless abyss. And I made foundation of light around the water, and created 7 circles from inside, and made the water look like crystal, wet and dry, so it was like glass, and the circles were around the waters and the other elements. And I showed each one of them its path, and the 7 stars each one of them in its heaven, that they go the correct way. And I saw that it was good, and I made separations between light and darkness in the midst of the water here and there. And I said to the light, that it should be the day, and to the darkness, that it should be the night. And there was evening, and there was morning on the first day. Note: the foundation of light around the water that is like crystal is likely a reference to the sky. One belief at the time of the writing was that the sky was an expanse of water, like an endless sea. Chapter 28. And then I made firm the heavenly circle, and made that the lower water which is under heaven collect itself together into one whole, peace, and that the chaos become dry, and it became so. Out of the waves I created hard and large rock, and from the rock I piled up the dry land, and the dry land I called earth, and the middle of the earth I called the abyss, or the bottomless. I collected the sea in one place, and bound it together with a yoke. Note: this is the bank, or shoreline. And I said to the sea, Behold, I give you eternal limits, and you shall not break loose from your integral parts. Thus I made the firmament hold together. This day I called the first created Sunday. This I called the first day of creation. Chapter 29. And for all the heavenly soldiers I made them the image and essence of fire. And my eye looked at the very hard, firm rock, and from the gleam of my eye the lightning received its wonderful nature, which is both fire and water and fire, and one does not put out the other, nor does the one dry up the other. Therefore the lightning is brighter than the sun, softer than water, and firmer than hard rock. Note: if the sky is made of water and lightning, which is fire, issues from the sky, then water and fire must exist together in a heavenly form. And from the rock I cut off a great fire, and from the fire I created the orders of the incorporeal, spiritual, non-physical, 10 troops of angels, and their weapons are fiery, and their raiment a burning flame, and I commanded that each one should stand in his order. And one from out the order of angels, having violated the command he was given, conceived an impossible thought, to place his throne higher than the clouds above the earth, so that he might become equal in rank to my power. And I threw him out from the height with his angels, and he was flying in the air continuously above the bottomless abyss. Note: we assume this ends the second day, although it is not mentioned. Chapter 30. On the 3rd day I commanded the earth to make and grow great and fruitful trees, and hills and seeds to sow, and I planted paradise and enclosed it, and placed armed guards in the form of my flaming angels, and in this way I created renewal. Then came evening, and morning came of the 4th day. On Wednesday, the 4th day, I commanded that there should be great lights on the heavenly circles. On the first uppermost circle I placed the stars, Cronus, and on the second Aphrodite. On the 3rd, Ares. On the 5th, Zeus. On the 6th, Hermes. On the 7th, Lesser the moon, and adorned it with the lesser stars. Note: the 4th heavenly circle is vacant. The Greek names for the heavenly bodies leave no doubt as to the influence of Greek words and ideas within this section of the text. And on the lower parts I place the sun for the illumination of day, and the moon and stars for the illumination of night. And I set the sun that it should go according to each of the 12 constellations, and I appointed the succession of the months and their names and lives, their thundering, and how they marked the hours, and how they should proceed. Then evening came and morning came of the 5th day. On Thursday, the 5th day, I commanded the sea that it should bring forth fishes, and feathered birds of many varieties, and all animals creeping over the earth, going forth over the earth on 4 legs, and soaring in the air, of male and female sex, and every soul breathing the spirit of life. Note: verse 8 proclaims the creation of all souls breathing, inspired by the spirit of life. The next verse proclaims the creation of man. This day filled the gulf, and incarnation begins in the next. And there came evening, and there came morning of the 6th day. On Friday, the 6th day, I commanded my wisdom to create man from 7 consistent applications. 1. His flesh from the earth. 2. His blood from the dew. 3. His eyes from the sun. 4. His bones from stone. 5. His intelligence from the swiftness of the angels and cloud. 6. His veins and his hair from the grass of the earth. 7. His soul from my breath and from the wind. And I gave him 7 natures: to the flesh, hearing; the eyes for sight; to the soul, smell; the veins for touch; the blood for taste; the bones for endurance; to the intelligence, enjoyment. I created a saying, speech, from knowing. I created man from spiritual and from physical nature. From both come his death and life and appearance. He knows speech like some created thing. He is small in greatness and great in smallness, and I placed him on earth, like a second angel, to be honorable, great, and glorious. And I appointed him as ruler to rule on earth, and to have my wisdom, and there was none like him on earth of all my existing creatures. And I appointed him a name made from the 4 components, from east, from west, from south, and from north. And I appointed for him 4 special stars, and I called his name Adam, and showed him the 2 ways, the light and the darkness. And I told him, this is good, and that bad, so that I should learn whether he has love towards me or hatred, and so that it would be clear who in his race loves me. Note: the Hebrew name of Adam means man. For I have seen his nature, but he has not seen his own nature, and therefore by not seeing it he will sin worse. And I said, after sin is there nothing but death? And I put sleep into him, and he fell asleep. And I took from him a rib, and created him a wife, so that death should come to him by his wife. And I took his last word, and called her name Mother, that is to say, Eve. Chapter 31. Adam has life on earth, and I created a garden in Eden in the east, so that he should observe the testament and keep the command. I made the heavens open to him, so that he would see the angels singing the song of victory, and the light without shadow. And he was continuously in paradise. And the devil understood that I wanted to create another world, because Adam was Lord on earth, to rule and control it. The devil is the evil spirit of the lower places. He made himself a fugitive from the heavens as the devil, and his name was Satan. Thus he became different from the angels, but his nature did not change his intelligence, as it applied to his understanding of righteous and sinful things. And he understood his condemnation and the sin that he had committed before. Therefore he devised a thought against Adam, in which he entered and seduced Eve, but did not touch Adam. But I cursed ignorance. However, what I had blessed before I did not curse. I did not curse man, nor the earth, nor other creatures, but I cursed a man's evil results and his works. Chapter 32. I said to him, "You are earth, dirt, and into the earth from where I took you, you shall go, and I will not destroy you, but send you back from where I took you. Then I can again receive you at my second presence." And I blessed all my creatures, both physical and spiritual. And Adam was 5.5 hours in paradise. And I blessed the seventh day, which is the Sabbath, on which he rested from all his works. Note, the 5.5 hours is tied to the 5,500 years of punishment mentioned in the books of Adam and Eve. See the first and second books of Adam and Eve by Joseph Lumpkin. Chapter 33. And I appointed the 8th day also, that the 8th day should be the first created after my work, and that the first 7 revolve in the form of the 7,000, and that at the beginning of the 8,000 there should be a time of not counting, endless, with neither years nor months nor weeks nor days nor hours. Note, a day is as 1,000 years. This prophecy seems to indicate that after 6,000 years, there will be 1,000 years of rest. Then there will be timelessness. And now, Enoch, all that I have told you, all that you have understood, all that you have seen of heavenly things, all that you have seen on earth, all that I have written in books by my great wisdom, and all these things I have devised and created for the uppermost foundation, to the lower and to the end, and there is no counselor nor inheritor to my creations. I am eternal unto myself, not made with hands and without change. My thought is my own counselor. My wisdom and my word creates, and my eyes observe how all things stand here and tremble with terror. If I turn away my face, then all things will be destroyed. Apply your mind, Enoch, and I know him who is speaking to you, and take the books there, which you yourself have written. I will give you Samuel and Raguel, who led you upward with the books, and go down to earth, and tell your sons all that I have told you, and all that you have seen, from the lower heaven up to my throne, and all the troops. For I created all forces, and there is none that resists me, and none that does not subject himself to me. For all subject themselves to my kingdom, and labor for my complete rule. Give them the books of the handwriting, and they will read them, and will know that I am the creator of all things, and will understand how there is no other God but me. And let them distribute the books of your handwriting from children to children, generation to generation, nation to nation. And Enoch I will give you, my intercessor, the archangel Michael, for the writings of your fathers Adam, Seth, Enos, Canaan, Mahalalel, and Jared, your father. Chapter 34. They have rejected my commandments and my yoke. Therefore worthless seed has come up, not fearing God, and they would not bow down to me, but have begun to bow down to empty gods, and rejected my unity, oneness, sovereignty, and have piled the whole earth up with lies, offenses, abominable lusts with one another, and all manner of other unclean wickedness, which are disgusting to even mention. And therefore I will bring down a deluge upon the earth, and will destroy all men, and the whole earth will crumble together into great darkness. Chapter 35. You will see that from their seed shall arise another generation, long afterward, but of them many will be full of very strong desires that are never satisfied. He who raises that generation shall reveal the books of your writing of your fathers to them, and he must point out the guardianship of the world to the faithful men and workers of my pleasure, who do not acknowledge my name in empty words. And they shall tell another generation, and those others, who, having read, shall afterward be glorified more than the first. Chapter 36. Now, Enoch, I give you a period of 30 days to spend in your house, and tell your sons and all your household, so that all may hear from you what was spoken by my face, so that they may read and understand that there is no other God but me, and that they may always keep my commandments, and begin to read and absorb the books of your writing. And after 30 days I shall send my angel for you, and he will take you from earth and from your sons, and bring you to me. Chapter 37. And the Lord called upon one of the older angels who was terrible and menacing, and he placed him by me. He appeared white as snow, and his hands were like ice, having the appearance of great frost, and he froze my face, because I could not endure the terror of the Lord, just as it is not possible to endure a stove's fire, or the sun's heat, or the frost of the air. And the Lord said to me, Enoch, if your face is not frozen here, no man will be able to look at your face. Chapter 38. And the Lord said to those men who first led me up, Let Enoch go down onto earth with you, and await him until the determined day. And by night they placed me on my bed. But Methuselah was expecting my return, and was keeping watch in my bed by day and night. And he was filled with awe when he heard my return. And I told him, Let all my household come together, so that I may tell them everything. Chapter 39. O my children, my loved ones, hear the advice of your father, as much as is according to the Lord's will. I have been allowed to come to you today, and preach to you, not from my lips, but from the Lord's lips, all that is now, and was, and all that will be until judgment day. For the Lord has allowed me to come to you, so that you could hear the words of my lips, a man who made great for you. But I am one who has seen the Lord's face, and it was like iron made to glow from fire. It sends forth sparks and burns. You look upon my eyes now. They are the eyes of a man enlarged with meaning for you. But I have seen the Lord's eyes, shining like the sun's rays and filling the eyes of man with awe. You see now, my children, the right hand of a man that helps you. But I have seen the Lord's right hand filling heaven as he helped me. You see, the scope of my work is like your own, but I have seen the Lord's limitless and perfect scope, which has no end. You hear the words of my lips, as I hear the words of the Lord, and they are like constant and great thunder with hurling of clouds. And now, my children, hear the lecture of the Father of the earth. I will tell you how fearful and awful it is to come before the face of the ruler of the earth, and how much more terrible and awful it is to come before the face of the ruler of heaven, who is the judge of the quick and the dead, and of the controller of the heavenly troops. Who of us can endure that endless pain? Chapter 40. And now, my children, I know all things, for this is from the Lord's lips, and my eyes have seen this, from beginning to end. I know all things, and have written all things in the books, the heavens and their end, and their abundance, and all the armies and their marching. I have measured and described the stars, the great innumerable multitude of them. What man has seen their revolutions and their entrances? For not even the angels see their number, but I have written all their names. And I measured the sun's circumference, and measured its rays, and counted the hours. I also wrote down all things that go over the earth. I have written down the things that are nourished, and all seed sown and unsown, which the earth produces, and all plants, and every grass and every flower, and their sweet smells, and their names, and the dwelling places of the clouds, and their composition, and their wings, and how they carry rain and raindrops. And I investigated all things, and described the road of the thunder and of the lightning, and they showed me the keys and their guardians, their rise, and the way they proceed. They are let out gradually, in measure, by a chain. If they were not let out at a measured rate by a heavy chain, their violence would hurl down the angry clouds, and destroy all things on earth. I described the treasure houses of the snow, and the storehouses of the cold and the frosty airs, and I observed the keyholders of the seasons. He fills the clouds with them, and it does not exhaust the treasure houses. And I wrote down the resting places of the winds, and saw how their keyholders bear weighing scales and measures. First, they put them in one side of the weighing scale. Then in the other side, they placed the weights, and let them out according to measure skillfully, over the whole earth, to keep the heavy winds from making the earth rock. The wind blows and makes the earth hard and rock. And I measured out the whole earth, its mountains and all hills, fields, trees, stones, rivers, all existing things I wrote down, the height from earth to the seventh heaven, and downwards to the very lowest hell, and the judgment place, and the very great, open and weeping, gaping hell. And I saw how the prisoners are in pain, expecting the limitless judgment. And I wrote down all those being judged by the judge, and all their judgment and sentences, and all their works. Chapter 41. And I saw throughout all time all the forefathers from Adam and Eve, and I sighed and broke into tears, and spoke of the ruin and their dishonor. And I said, Woe is me for my infirmity, and for that of my forefathers, and thought in my heart, and said, Blessed is the man who has not been born, or who has been born and shall not sin before the Lord's face, because he will not come into this place, nor bear the yoke of this place on himself. Chapter 42. I saw the keyholders and guards of the gates of hell, standing like great serpents, and their faces were glowing like extinguishing lamps, and I saw their eyes of fire, and their sharp teeth, and I saw all of the Lord's works, how they are right, while some of the works of man are of limited good, and others bad, and in their works are those who are known to speak evil lies. Chapter 43. My children. Chapter 43. My children, I measured and wrote out every work and every measure and every righteous judgment. As 1 year is more honorable than another, so is one man more honorable than another. Some men are honored for great possessions, some for wisdom of heart, some for particular intellect, some for skillfulness, one for silence of lip, another for cleanliness, one for strength, another for beauty, one for youth, another for sharp wit, one for shape of body, another for sensibility. But let it be heard everywhere, there is none better than he who fears God. He shall be more glorious in time to come. Chapter 44. The Lord created man with his hands in the likeness of his own face. The Lord made him small and great. Whoever reviles the ruler's face hates the Lord's face, and has contempt for the Lord's face. And he who vents anger on any man without having been injured by him, the Lord's great anger will cut him down. He who spits on the face of man reproachfully will be cut down at the Lord's great judgment. Blessed is the man who does not direct his heart with malice against any man, and helps the injured and condemned, and raises up the broken down, and does charity to the needy, because on the day of the great judgment, every weight, every measure, and every make weight will be as in the market. So they are hung on scales and stand in the market, and every one shall learn his own measure, and according to his measure shall take his reward. Note: make weight is something put on a scale to make up the required weight for a more precise measurement. Chapter 45. Whoever hurries to make offerings before the Lord's face, the Lord will hasten that offering by giving of his work. But whoever increases his lamp before the Lord's face, and makes a judgment that is not true, the Lord will not increase his treasure in the realm of the highest. Note: whoever makes himself out to be more than he is, and whoever judges others without truth or cause, the Lord will not reward in heaven. When the Lord demands bread, or candles, or the flesh of beasts, or any other sacrifice, it is nothing. But God demands pure hearts, and with all he does, it is only the tests of man's heart. Chapter 46. Hear, my people, and take in the words of my lips. If any one brings any gifts to any earthly ruler, and has disloyal thoughts in his heart, and the ruler know this, will the ruler not be angry with him, and refuse his gifts, and give him over to judgment? Or if one man makes himself appear good to another by deceit of the tongue, but has evil in his heart, then will the other person not understand the treachery of his heart, and condemn him, since his lie was plain to all? And when the Lord shall send a great light, then there will be judgment for the just and the unjust, and no one shall escape notice. Chapter 47. And now, my children, with your minds and your hearts, mark well the words of your Father, which all have come to you from the Lord's lips. Take these books of your Father's writing, and read them, for there are many books, and in them you will learn all the Lord's works, all that has been from the beginning of creation, and will be until the end of time. And if you will observe my writing, you will not sin against the Lord, because there is no other except the Lord in heaven, nor in earth, nor in the very lowest places, nor in the foundation. The Lord has placed the foundations in the unknown, and has spread out heavens, both physical and spiritual. He anchored the earth on the waters, and created countless creatures. Who has counted the water in the foundation of the mutable, changeable, corruptible, or the dust of the earth, or the sand of the sea, or the drops of the rain, or the morning dew, or the winds blowing, breathing? Who has filled earth and sea, and the indestructible winter? I, the Lord, cut the stars out of fire, and decorated heaven, and put it in their midst. Chapter 48. The sun goes along the 7 heavenly circles, which are the appointment of 182 thrones. It goes down on a short day, and again 182. It goes down on a short day, and again 182. It goes down on a long day, and he has 2 thrones on which he rests, revolving here and there above the thrones of the months. From the 17th day of the month Sivan, it goes down to the month Thivan. From the 17th of Thivan it goes up. Note, the words Thivan and Thivan refer to the summer and winter solstice, dividing the lengthening and shortening of days. The sun goes in a sinusoidal wave, decreasing daylight time for 182 days, and growing longer in daylight hours for 182 days. with an extra day, which is a long day. The total is 365 days. When it goes close to the earth, then the earth is glad and makes its fruits grow. And when it goes away, then the earth is sad, and trees and all fruits will not flower. All this he measured with good measurement of hours, and predetermined a measure by his wisdom of the physical and the spiritual realms. From the spiritual realm he made all things that are physical, himself being spiritual. So I teach you, my children, and tell you to distribute the books to your children, into all your generations, and among the nations who shall have the sense to fear God. Let them receive them, and may they come to love them more than any food or earthly sweets, and read them and apply themselves to them. And those who do not understand the Lord, who do not fear God, who do not accept, but reject, who do not receive the books, a terrible judgment awaits these. Blessed is the man who shall bear their yoke, and shall drag them along, for he shall be released on the day of the great judgment. Chapter 49. I swear to you, my children, but I do not swear by any oath, neither by heaven, nor by earth, nor by any other creature created by God. The Lord said, there is no oath in me, nor injustice, but only truth. But there is no truth in men, so let them swear by the words, yeah, or else, nay, nay. And I swear to you, yeah, that every man that has been in his mother's womb has had a place prepared for the repose of that soul, and a measure predetermined of how much it is intended that a man be tried, tested, in this world. Yeah, children, do not deceive yourselves, for there has been a place previously prepared for the soul of every man. Note, this is a statement of predestination. Chapter 50. I have put every man's work in writing, and none born on earth can remain hidden, nor his works remain concealed. I see all things. Therefore, my children, spend the number of your days in patience and meekness, so that you may inherit eternal life. For the sake of the Lord, endure every wound, every injury, every evil word, and every attack. If your good deeds are not rewarded but return for ill to you, do not repay them to neither neighbor nor enemy, because the Lord will return them for you, and be your revenger on the day of great judgment, so that there should be no vengeance here among men. Whoever of you spends gold or silver for his brother's sake, he will receive ample treasure in the world to come. Do not injure widows or orphans or strangers, for if you do, God's wrath will come upon you. Chapter 51. Stretch out your hands to the poor according to your strength. Do not hide your silver in the earth. Help the faithful man in affliction, and affliction will not find you in the time of your trouble. And bear every grievous and cruel yoke that comes upon you, for the sake of the Lord, and thus you will find your reward in the day of judgment. It is good to go morning, midday, and evening into the Lord's house, for the glory of your Creator, because every breathing thing glorifies Him, and every creature, both physical and spiritual, gives Him praise, gives His praise back to Him. Chapter 52. Blessed is the man who opens his lips in praise of God of Sabaoth, host, army, and praises the Lord with his heart. Cursed is every man who opens his lips for the purpose of bringing contempt and slander to, of, his neighbor, because he brings God into contempt. Blessed is he who opens his lips blessing and praising God. Cursed before the Lord all the days of his life is he who opens his lips to curse and abuse. Blessed is he who blesses all the Lord's works. Cursed is he who brings the Lord's creation into contempt. Blessed is he who looks down and raises the fallen. Cursed is he who looks to and is eager for the destruction of what is not his. Blessed is he who keeps the foundations of his fathers that were made firm from the beginning. Cursed is he who corrupts the doctrine of his forefathers. Blessed is he who imparts peace and love. Cursed is he who disturbs those that love their neighbors. Blessed is he who speaks with humble tongue and heart to all. Cursed is he who speaks peace with his tongue, while in his heart there is no peace but a sword. For all these things will be laid bare in the scales of balance and in the books, on the day of the great judgment. Chapter 53. And now, my children, do not say, Our Father is standing before God and is praying for our sins, for there is no helper for any man who has sinned. You see how I wrote down all of the works of every man before his creation, all that is done among all men for all time. And none can tell or relate my writing, because the Lord sees all imaginings of man, and how they are empty and prideful, where they lie, and how they are empty and prideful, where they lie in the treasure houses of the heart. And now, my children, mark well all the words of your father that I tell you, or you will be regretful, saying, Why did our father not tell us? Note: although chapters 51 and 52 seem similar to the Sermon on the Mount, chapter 53 offers no balance between mercy and justice. There is no helper for any man who has sinned, is a statement excluding a savior. Scholars point to this verse to conclude 2 Enoch is a Jewish text. As stated before, 2 Enoch seems to be a Jewish text that was Christianized by additions and embellishment of the core text. Chapter 53 is part of the core Jewish text, likely written before the Christian sect. Verse 2 is a statement of predestination or foreknowledge. Chapter 54. Let these books which I have given you be for an inheritance of your peace in that time that you do not understand things. Hand them to all who want them, and instruct them, that they may see the Lord's very great and marvelous works. Chapter 55. My children, behold, the day of my determined period, term and time, has approached. For the angels who shall go with me are standing before me, and urge me to my departure from you. They are standing here on earth, awaiting what has been told them. For tomorrow I shall go up to heaven, to the uppermost Jerusalem, to my eternal inheritance. Therefore I bid you to do the Lord's good pleasure before his face at all times. Note: the Jerusalem spoken of here is the spiritual Jerusalem, spoken of by John, coming down from heaven. The name Jerusalem refers to the components of the actual name, which, broken down to mean provision and peace. Chapter 56. Methuselah answered his father Enoch, and said, What food is agreeable to your eyes, father, that I may prepare before your face, that you may bless our houses and your sons, and that your people may be made glorious through you, and then that you may depart, as the Lord said. Enoch answered his son Methuselah and said, Hear me, my child. From the time when the Lord anointed me with the ointment of his glory, there has been no food in me, and my soul remembers not earthly enjoyment, neither do I want anything earthly. Chapter 57. My child Methuselah, summon all your brethren, and all of your household, and the elders of the people, that I may talk to them and depart, as is planned for me. And Methuselah hurried, and summoned his brethren, Regem, Rimmon, Uchan, Chermion, and Gaidad, and all the elders of the people, before the face of his father Enoch, and he blessed them, and said to them. Chapter 58. Listen to me, my children, today. In those days when the Lord came down to earth for Adam's sake, and visited all his creatures, which he created himself, after all these he created Adam, and the Lord called all the beasts of the earth, all the reptiles, and all the birds that soar in the air, and brought them all before the face of our father Adam. And Adam gave names to all things living on earth. And the Lord appointed him ruler over all, and subjected all things to him under his hands, and made them dumb, and made them dull, that they would be commanded by man, and be in subjection and obedience to him. The Lord also created every man lord over all his possessions. The Lord will not judge a single soul of beasts for man's sake, but he judges the souls of men through their beasts in this world, for men have a special place. And as every soul of man is according to number, similarly beasts will not perish, nor all souls of beasts which the Lord created, until the great judgment, and they will accuse man if he did not feed them well. Chapter 59. Whoever defiles the soul of beasts defiles his own soul, for man brings clean animals to make sacrifice for sin, that he may have cure for his soul. And if they bring clean animals and birds for sacrifice, man has a cure. He cures his soul. All is given you for food. Bind it by the 4 feet to make good the cure. But whoever kills beasts without wounds kills his own souls and defiles his own flesh. And he who does any beast any injury whatsoever, in secret, it is an evil practice, and he defiles his own soul. Note, to kill without a wound is to inflict blunt force trauma, to beat them to death. Chapter 60. He who works the killing of a man's soul, he who murders, kills his own soul, and kills his own body, and there is no cure for him for all time. He who puts a man in any snare, moral entrapment, shall stick himself in it, and there is no cure for him for all time. He who puts a man in any vessel, his retribution will not be wanting at the great judgment for all time. He who works dishonestly or speaks evil against any soul will not make justice for himself for all time. Chapter 61. And now, my children, keep your hearts from every injustice, which the Lord hates. Just as a man asks something for his own soul from God, so let him do the same to every living soul, because I know all things, how in the great time to come there is a great inheritance prepared for men, good for the good and bad for the bad, no matter the number. Blessed are those who enter the good houses, for in the bad houses there is no peace or return from them. Hear, my children, small and great, when man puts a good thought in his heart, it brings gifts from his labors before the Lord's face. But if his hands did not make them, then the Lord will turn away his face from the labor of his hand, and that man cannot find the labor of his hands. And if his hands made it, but his heart murmurs, complains, and his heart does not stop murmurs incessantly, he does not gain any advantage. Chapter 62. Blessed is the man who, in his patience, brings his gifts with faith before the Lord's face, because he will find forgiveness of sins. But if he takes back his words before the time, there is no repentance for him. And if the time passes, and he does not of his own will perform what is promised, there is no repentance after death. because every work which man does before the time, outside the time he has promised it, is all deceit before men and sin before God. Chapter 63. When man clothes the naked and fills the hungry, he will find reward from God. But if his heart complains, he commits double evil, ruin of himself and of that which he gives, and for him there will be no finding of reward because of that. And if his own heart is filled with his food, and his own flesh is clothed with his own clothing, he commits contempt, and will forfeit all his endurance of poverty, and will not find reward of his good deeds, if he is selfish and does not add to the economy of others. Every proud and pontificating man is hateful to the Lord, and every false speech is clothed in lies. It will be cut with the blade of the sword of death, and thrown into the fire, and shall burn for all time. Chapter 64. When Enoch had spoken these words to his sons, all people, far and near, heard how the Lord was calling Enoch. They took counsel together. Let us go and kiss Enoch. And 2,000 men came together, and came to the place called Achuzan, where Enoch was with his sons. And the elders of the people with the entire assembly came and bowed down, and began to kiss Enoch, and said to him, Our father Enoch, may you be blessed by the Lord, the eternal ruler. And now bless your sons and all the people, that we may be glorified today before your face. For you shall be glorified by the Lord's face for eternity, since the Lord chose you from among all men on earth, and designated you as the writer of all his creation, both physical and spiritual, and you are redeemed from the sins of man, and are the helper of your household. Chapter 65. And Enoch said to all his people, Hear me, my children. Before all creatures were created, the Lord created the physical and spiritual things, and then a long term passed. Then after all of that, he created man in the likeness of his own form, and put eyes into him to see, and ears into him to hear, and a heart to reflect, and intellect to enable him to deliberate. And the Lord saw all the works of man, and created all his creatures, and divided time. From time he determined the years, and from the years he appointed the months, and from the months he appointed the days, and of days he appointed 7. And in those he appointed the hours, measured them out exactly, that man might reflect on time, and count years, months, and hours, as they alternate from beginning to end, so that he might count his own life from the beginning until death, and reflect on his sin, and write his works, both bad and good. No work is hidden from the Lord, so that every man might know his works, and never transgress all his commandments, and keep my writing from generation to generation. When all creation, both physical and spiritual, as the Lord created it, shall end, then every man goes to the great judgment, and then all time shall be destroyed along with the years, and from then on there will be neither months, nor days, nor hours. They will run together, and will not be counted. There will be one eon, age, and all the righteous who shall escape the Lord's great judgment shall be collected in the great eon, age. For the righteous, the great eon will begin, and they will live eternally, and there will be no labor, nor sickness, nor humiliation, nor anxiety, nor need, nor brutality, nor night, nor darkness, but great light among them. And they shall have a great indestructible wall, and a paradise that is bright and eternal, for all mortal things shall pass away, and there will be eternal life. Note, an eon is 1 billion years, but is used to mean a very long but indefinite period of time. The word eternal means unchanging, incorruptible, immortal. The word used for mortal is the opposite of eternal, thus mortal, corruptible, changing. Chapter 66. And now, my children, keep your souls from all injustice the Lord hates. Walk before his face with great fear, respect, and trembling, and serve him only. Bow down to the true God, not to dumb idols, but bow down to his likeness, and bring all just offerings before the Lord's face. The Lord hates what is unjust. Note: this is an odd command issued by Enoch, that the people are not to bow to dumb idols, but are to bow to the likeness or similitude of God. This was likely added by Christians around the 3rd or 4th centuries AD. For the Lord sees all things. When man takes thought in his heart, then he counsels the intellects, and every thought is always before the Lord, who made firm the earth and put all creatures on it. If you look to heaven, the Lord is there. If you take thought of the sea's depth and all under the earth, the Lord is there. For the Lord created all things. Bow not down to things made by man, leaving the Lord of all creation, because no work can remain hidden before the Lord's face. Walk, my children, in long-suffering, in meekness, honesty, in thoughtfulness, in grief, in faith, and in truth. Walk in, rely on, promises, in times of illness, in abuse, in wounds, in temptation, in nakedness, in privation, loving one another, until you go out from this age of ills, that you become inheritors of endless time. Blessed are the just who shall escape the great judgment, for they shall shine forth more than the sun sevenfold. For in this world the 7th part is taken off from all: light, darkness, food, enjoyment, sorrow, paradise, torture, fire, frost, and other things. He put all down in writing, that you might read and understand. Chapter 67. When Enoch had talked to the people, the Lord sent out darkness onto the earth, and there was darkness, and it covered those men standing with Enoch, and they took Enoch up onto the highest heaven, where the Lord is. And there God received him, and placed him before his face. And the darkness went off from the earth, and light came again. And the people saw, and did not understand how Enoch had been taken. And they glorified God, and found a scroll in which was written, "The God of the spiritual." Then all went to their dwelling places. Chapter 68. Enoch was born on the 6th day of the month Sivan, the 1st month of the year, and lived 365 years. He was taken up to heaven on the 1st day of the month Sivan, and remained in heaven 60 days. He wrote all these signs of all creation, which the Lord created, and wrote 366 books, and handed them over to his sons, and remained on earth 30 days, and was again taken up to heaven on the 6th day of the month Sivan, on the very day and hour when he was born. As every man's nature in this life is dark, so are also his conception, birth, and departure from this life. At what hour he was conceived, at that hour he was born, and at that hour also he died. Methuselah and his brethren, all the sons of Enoch, made haste, and erected an altar at that place called Achuzan, where Enoch had been taken up to heaven. And they took sacrificial oxen, and summoned all people, and sacrificed the sacrifice before the Lord's face. All people, the elders of the people, and the whole assembly came to the feast, and brought gifts to the sons of Enoch. And they made a great feast, rejoicing and making merry 3 days, praising God, who had given them such a sign through Enoch, who had found favor with him, and that they should hand it on to their sons, from generation to generation, from age to age. Amen. Note: Enoch was born on the 6th day of Sivan. Sivan is the first month of the year. The sum is 7, one of the holy numbers. He lived 365 years, 1 year of years. He remained in heaven 60 days. 6 is the number of man, which always falls short of God. The short version ends here. The wife of Ner was Sopanim. She was sterile and never had at any time given birth to a child by Ner. Sopanim was in her old age and in the last days, time of her death. She conceived in her womb, but Ner the priest had not slept with her from the day that the Lord had appointed him to conduct the liturgy in front of the face of the people. When Sopanim saw her pregnancy, she was ashamed and embarrassed, and she hid herself during all the days until she gave birth. Not one of the people knew about it. When 282 days had been completed, and the day of birth had begun to approach, Ner thought about his wife, and he called her to come to him in his house, so that he might converse with her. 282 days is 9.4 of 30-day months. Sopanim came to Ner, her husband, and behold, she was pregnant, and the day appointed for giving birth was drawing near. Ner saw her, and became very ashamed. He said to her, "What is this that you have done, O wife? Why have you disgraced me in front of the face of these people? Now depart from me and go back to where you began this disgrace of your womb, so that I might not defile my hands in front of the face of the Lord on account of you and sin." Sopanim spoke to her husband, Ner, saying, "O my lord, look at me. It is the time of my old age. The day of my death has arrived. I do not understand how my menopause and the barrenness of my womb have been reversed." But Ner did not believe his wife, and for the second time he said to her, "Depart from me, or else I might assault you and commit a sin in front of the face of the Lord." And after Ner had spoken to his wife Sopanim, she fell down at Ner's feet and died. Ner was extremely distressed and said to himself, "Could this have happened because of my words? And now, merciful is the eternal Lord, because my hand was not upon her." The archangel Gabriel appeared to Ner and said to him, "Do not think that your wife Sopanim has died due to your error. This child, which is to be born from her, is a righteous fruit, and one whom I shall receive into paradise, so that you will not be the father of a gift of God." Ner hurried and shut the door of his house. He went to Noah, his brother, and he reported to him everything that had happened in connection with his wife. Noah hurried to the room of his brother. The appearance of his brother's wife was as if she were dead, but her womb was at the same time giving birth. Noah said to Ner, "Don't let yourself be sorrowful, Ner, my brother. Today the Lord has covered up our scandal, because nobody from the people knows this. Now let us go quickly and bury her, and the Lord will cover up the scandal of our shame." They placed Sopanim on the bed, wrapped her around with black garments, and shut the door. They dug a grave in secret. When they had gone out toward the grave, a child came out from Sopanim's dead body and sat on the bed at her side. Noah and Ner came in to bury Sopanim, and they saw the child sitting beside Sopanim's dead body, and he was wiping his clothing. Noah and Ner were very terrified with great fear, because the child was physically fully developed. The child spoke with his lips and blessed the Lord. Noah and Ner looked at him closely, saying, "This is from the Lord, my brother. The badge of priesthood is on his chest, and it is glorious in appearance." Noah said to Ner, "God is renewing the priesthood from blood related to us, just as he pleases." Noah and Ner hurried and washed the child. They dressed him in the garments of the priesthood, and they gave him bread to eat, and he ate it, and they called him Melchizedek. Noah and Ner lifted up the body of Sopanim, and took the black garment off of her and washed her. They clothed her in exceptionally bright garments and built a grave for her. Noah, Ner, and Melchizedek came and they buried her publicly. Then Noah said to his brother Near, "Take care of this child in secret until the proper time comes, because all of the people on earth will become treacherous, and they will begin to turn away from God. Having become completely ignorant of God, when they see him, they will put him to death in some way." Then Noah went away to his own place, and there came great lawlessness that began to become abundant over all the earth in the days of Near. And Near began to worry greatly about the child, saying, "What will I do with him?" And stretching out his hands toward heaven, Near called out to the Lord, saying, "It is miserable for me, eternal Lord, that all of this lawlessness has begun to become abundant over all the earth in my lifetime. I realize how much nearer our end is because of the lawlessness of the people. And now, Lord, what is the vision about this child, and what is his destiny, or what will I do for him, so that he will not be joined along with us in this destruction?" The Lord took notice of Near and appeared to him in a night vision. And he said to him, "Near, the great lawlessness which has come about on the earth, I shall not tolerate any more. I plan to send down a great destruction onto the earth. But do not worry about the child, Near. In a short while, I will send my archangel Gabriel, and he will take the child and put him in the paradise of Edom. He will not perish along with those who must perish, as I have revealed it. Melchizedek will be my priest. As I have revealed it, Melchizedek will be my priest to all holy priests. I will sanctify him, and I will establish him so that he will be the head of the priests of the future." Note: Edom means God will save. It is assumed Edom is Eden. Then Near arose from his sleep and blessed the Lord, who had appeared to him, saying, "Blessed be the Lord, the God of my fathers, who has approved of my priesthood and the priesthood of my fathers, because by his word he has created a great priest in the womb of Sopanim, my wife. For I have no descendants, so let this child take the place of my descendants and become as my own son. You will count him in the number of your servants. Therefore honor him together with your servants and great priests and me, your servant, Near. And behold, Melchizedek will be the head of priests in another generation. I know that great confusion has come, and in confusion this generation will come to an end, and everyone will perish, except that Noah, my brother, will be preserved for procreation. From his tribe there will arise numerous people, and Melchizedek will become the head of priests, reigning over a royal people, who will serve you, O Lord." It happened when the child had completed 40 days in Near's tent. The Lord said to the archangel Gabriel, "Go down to the earth to Near the priest, and take the child Melchizedek, who is with him. Place him in the paradise of Edom for preservation, for the time is already approaching, and I will pour out all the water onto the earth, and everything that is on the earth will perish, and I will raise it up again, and Melchizedek will be the head of the priests in that generation." And Gabriel hurried, and came flying down when it was night, when Near was sleeping on his bed that night. Gabriel appeared to him and said to him, "The Lord says, Near, restore the child to me, whom I entrusted to you." But Near did not realize who was speaking to him, and he was confused. And he said, "When the people find out about the child, they will seize him and kill him, because the heart of these people are deceitful before the Lord." And he answered Gabriel and said, "The child is not with me, and I don't know who is speaking to me." Gabriel answered him, "Near, do not be afraid. I am the archangel Gabriel. The Lord sent me to take your child today. I will go with him, and I will place him in the paradise of Edom." Then Near remembered the first dream and believed it. He answered Gabriel, "Blessed be the Lord, who has sent you to me today. Now bless your servant Near. Take the child, and do to him all that has been said to you." And Gabriel took the child, Melchizedek, on his wings in that same night, and he placed him in the paradise of Edom. Near got up in the morning, And he went into his tent and did not find the child. There was great joy and grief for Near, because he felt the child had the place of a son. The Lord said to Noah, "Make an ark that is 300 cubits in length, 50 cubits in width, and in 30 cubits height. Put the entrance to the ark in its side, and make it with 2 stories in the middle." The Lord God opened the doors of heaven. Rain came onto the earth, and all flesh died. Noah fathered 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. He went into the ark in his 600th year. After the flood, he lived 350 years. He lived in all 950 years, according to the Lord our God. To our God be glory always, now and eternally. Amen.